Today's episode is sponsored by Little Bird, the independent diamond and engagement ring consultants. The best way to buy an engagement ring is with a bird's eye view. You can find them at littlebirdtoldyou.com. I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
Like they say, it's like travel with someone, you'll really know them. And it's true. Mm-hmm. But I think travel and then survive coming home and rebuilding your life and then see where you're at.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for listening. Today's episode is about adventure travel. We thought a story about hitting the road would be a really great way to kick off the new year. Our guests today, Dan and Natalie, had just returned from a 6-month world tour when we recorded this episode. So we get to hear all about their adventures, about getting engaged on the road, and about the challenges of coming home afterwards. Now, their meeting story is also very sweet, but to save on time, we're posting that clip for Patreon subscribers. And you can find that at patreon.com/together if you'd like to hear it. And I'll put a link to that in our show notes. Now, we're picking up this interview just as I'm asking about how these two planned their trip. So with that, let's go to our interview with Dan and Natalie. So I remember Dan, when I first met Dan, he was very much a single man. And not just a single man, but weren't you coaching?
I was a dating coach at the time.
You were coaching guys on dating, not pickup, which is a whole separate thing, but
very different.
But just coaching, dating.
Yep, communication coaching, dating coaching, men, women, all of that. That was what I was doing. And
there was nothing, because I've said that, it could sound like I'm trying to be sensationalist. I want to just be clear, there was nothing smarmy about you. Actually, the reason that I've always really liked you is that you are just so genuine, and you were really a solid, genuine guy back then. One of the few, I think, in that industry. That said, I think you were probably looking, but you had never found a partner to really settle down with.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there was Natalie, and it's just, from my universe, she just appeared out of nowhere, and it was on.
Yep.
From
Fell
the beginning.
From the sky. Yeah.
That's kind of how it happened. It just, appeared, and along with all of a whole bunch of new friends, and it just we've been inseparable kind of ever since.
Yeah.
Well, tell me the story. How did it happen?
Told us so many times.
It is.
But it's always
story.
a fun one.
Yep.
We met at a decompression, which is the sort of post-Burning Man block party in San Francisco. Neither of us had even been to Burning Man before, but knew some people in that world, and just randomly kind of met. It was interesting. I actually happened to be there with a guy I was dating at the time. He wasn't local, I'll say that. It was definitely a long-distance casual thing.
Yep. And then, of course, I was invited by my roommate, who is secretly in love with me.
Male or female?
Female.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is an acknowledged thing, or you're just saying this in public for the first time?
No, now I know. I knew, but at the time, I had no idea that she had a thing for me.
Yeah.
It's pretty well known at this point, but it was an interesting thing. So she invited me to be like, "Hey, come to this thing," and I thought it was just kind of very innocent. And she's like, "Yeah, I've got these really good friends," and they ended up meeting Natalie and the guy that she was hanging out with. And then my friend kind of introduced me to those friends, and those two friends are basically now our very first couple friends, and we've been friends, and we're going to be going to their wedding this fall, and and everything else. So,
but it was one of these just random days where we just kept running into each other, this whole group of us, and then we're like, let's just hang out. Let's just kind of be a unit. And so we kind of spent the rest of the day hanging out together, and I started to get to know Dan a little bit, and you guys were all just sort of separately walking around this festival area. Kind of.
And then you decided to glom together and become a...
Yeah.
Okay, I got it.
Become a little group.
But it was interesting because I remember she was wearing a wig, and it was, I couldn't really, like, it was funny because she's wearing her wig, and so she didn't really look like her, right?
Right.
Like, and so it was a very different thing. And I remember just
what color was the wig?
Was it silver or was it the blue
Silver.
one? I think it was a silver one.
And what colored hair what color do you define your hair as?
Yeah. Well, now it's brown, but I used to have blonde hair at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. And so it was really very different. Like she just had this wig on. So, but I remember having this conversation about like, we started off talking about really good books that we liked. And she commented on the fact that I had my helmet hanging off my bag, and so that I was a bicyclist. And then we just kind of like kept connecting on all of these things. And there was this moment that I remember saying, like, I had to consciously in my head go, wow, like she has this wig on. Is this girl like I'm really starting to become attracted to her, like emotionally and like, through conversation. And then like I had to kind of like take a step back and be like, is this girl actually physically attractive? And of course she but it was because of the wig. Like
the wig has everything.
It's like, right? I know, but I had to kind of view like, well, what does she actually look like under that wig? Or I had to think that in my moment. But the point of it was just that I had these moments of like, completely getting to know her without necessarily being the very first thing being like, oh, this is a hot girl, I want to go talk to her, right?
I'm kind of amazed the wig was what did that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like she was.
Disguise.
I mean, it's not that she wasn't unattractive, right? It was just like she was obviously pretty with the wig on, but like because I had to like. I sat there and talking to her, and I got to know her. Like I actually had to stop and back, like, oh. Wow, I've been getting to know her on such a like emotional, like personality level without having that involvement of the physical looks in it as much. And so the wig kind of made that an interesting moment for me.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah.
I just remember you had a really nice smile.
So it was all physical
Sold
for
out.
you.
Yeah, it was all physical. Just a beefcake. That's all I have.
You're just eye candy. No. We had a lot of things in common, and I was certainly intrigued.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do love the idea. I do love the idea of getting to know somebody outside of the physical sense that can be such a distraction. It's the initial attraction, which is great. It gets us chemically interested in one another, but it's also such a distraction.
It is.
From what really matters or what's going to last. Yeah. So I love that idea, but I'm still a wig.
Yeah.
A wig. I mean, come on.
But there was
Apparently.
other interesting things about us meeting too, is because like, she was with this other guy at this festival. And so,
right.
I immediately after talking to her for a little bit, got her phone number.
Yeah.
And then.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah.
I'm just understanding did you know that he was dating her?
She was with him, but I got to know her. I immediately got her phone number, and then like he came back, and then I was like, immediately asked that question of like how you find out that situation. It was like, oh, how do you guys know each other?
But how did you get her? How did you ask for the number?
I was just like, yeah, you're really cool. I got to get your number. And I just did it.
Which is great. Okay. And Natalie, what did you think to yourself, maybe I shouldn't give him my number because this is definitely, he's hitting on me and I'm here with another guy?
No, I mean, it's a complicated relationship I had with this other guy, and he had his own relationship as well. So it was always kind of understood that we were just a casual thing. And, if anything changed, it could. So yeah, we exchanged numbers. I felt fine about that. And you can't possibly know where that's going to go at the time.
Yeah. And for me, I was just like, you know what? She may or may not be with this guy. Like that has never stopped me in general. Like I still, if I like somebody that I mean, if they're in a relationship or not, I may still get their phone number just to be friends, to open up my social circle, to connect with and all of that. And then you never truly know what their relationship status is. And so I will always be respectful of that and not cross any boundaries. But I do, in that situation, I was like, well, he's the long distance thing. It's that. I don't know what's going on, but I figure I'll call her on Tuesday when he goes back to where he's coming from, and then I'll ask her out.
Which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, well, actually, what happened was she ended up seeking me out on Facebook.
I think I did.
The very next day.
So then you had
No,
the
it
green light
wasn't.
for sure.
And then, then I tried to connect and get her out on a date.
Was
and all
it the
of that.
next day?
It was
I think I was
totally
trying to
the
be
next day.
casual, like, hey, it was great meeting you. Like,
Yeah.
we should hang. Something
Yeah,
like
and I was doing that stupid, guys wait 2-day rule. But mainly I was just waiting to make sure that the other guy went home. Yep.
Is the other guy going to listen to this?
He may.
He might. I've lost touch with him a little bit, but we've been friends for a really long time.
He was actually really nice. I had, I liked hanging out with them all at the time and it, I think we've always been respectful of those boundaries too.
Yeah. I'm just trying to see if there's any other dirt I should get in case he does listen. Well, okay, cool. So, then what happened after that? Did it just sort of take off right away? Was it one of those?
Kind of.
Yeah, we went on a date and
4 years ago today.
I was just going to ask. So that's 4 years.
today is our first anniversary of our very first date.
Yep.
Oh, you guys.
Yeah.
Crazy.
This is the anniversary. We're recording this.
Anniversary.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. What is today?
Seems
October
fitting. 14th.
14th. Okay.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, it was a
got-
week after decompression, which is kind of the same way
Yeah.
it is now, except though ours was on a Sunday.
Yep.
And we went out, had a little Thai food, and I'm usually not one to take a girl out on a dinner date for the first date, but it was kind of like my favorite food, and it was cheap, and it was also like I already knew that I liked this girl, and so I kind of broke some of my own rules. And then
what would the normal rule be?
the normal rule is you never take a first date to a dinner date. It's too much pressure, too much money. It's too much all of that stuff. It's better to just go grab coffee or a drink if you're a drinker.
Then you can pull the ripcord if either
And then
one of you has to.
Yeah.
Then if you like, you can go, you can stay, you can make a second date, and then
Yeah.
usually so. And then
And
Did you
just-
recognize me when I walked in?
well,
Considering I didn't have a wig.
the moment she walked in the first time, I was like, oh my God, I was a little speechless of how pretty she was. And I was like, oh goodness, she's a little out of my league. But we ended up just having this great conversation, and she was laughing and smiling, and she was just we really connected, and it was actually really easy, which is something that was has been a constant thing through our relationship too. Is it's amazing how well we've connected on so many different levels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are really easy with each other.
Yeah.
It's it's a very natural connection that you have.
Yeah.
Well, give me the summary of what happened from dating, and then you got married, and then started traveling. So
Okay, so
Yeah.
we dated for this is our 4-year anniversary. So we
were
and it was this time of last year
3
we
years
started
in. Yeah.
basically planning putting the final touches on our travel. And so we weren't engaged or married yet. We started planning. We basically were I've always wanted to take this amazing trip, and a long extended period of time, and she's as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just decided we were going to make it happen. She was graduating from her MFT, her marriage and family therapy degree, and but she had some time before she needed to kind of do the licensure part, and so it was a good stopping point for her. And I just said, screw it. I quit my job and set them up so that they would be okay. And then we decided to travel for 6 months from basically from
8
January
countries.
to 8 or 9 countries, and
Quick
traveled
feet.
from last January all the way till
July,
early this
through July.
mid-July.
is there anything that you I mean, just figuring out how to just do that as an individual solo person is
It's hard.
enough, right? How to
Yeah.
afford it, what to
Yeah.
bring, just all the logistics.
Yep.
But then adding in a second person, were there complications that you, looking back, you didn't anticipate but turned out to be a thing?
I don't know. We were pretty methodical with it. I mean, there's only so much you could plan for a trip like that, and there was a lot of planning on the fly as we were into our trip. But I took care of a lot of the logistical, like where we're going to go, how much time, trying to book flights. Dan was really great at figuring out all the travel gear. It was like every day, like Amazon would deliver some new little gadget, and they're all like super tiny little things. I'm like, what does this do? And,
Yeah, leave it to Dan to handle gear. That's obvious.
He's got an eye for tech and
But
travel
I think
gear.
the really challenging part for us is because we do, I've been collecting airline miles through travel hacking for years, and we had about 1 million airline miles together.
That's pretty good.
This plan. And so we decided to do it all by airline miles. But
That's great.
It can be really challenging to kind of
It was a
book
stressful
this
time.
whole thing. And so like we actually even paid someone to try and do that for us,
Yeah.
and they did such a poor job that we had to they had this money back guarantee, and we're like, and so we booked it all on our own, and we didn't take a single bit of information that he had given us or a single flight that he had actually put down because it just didn't work.
It basically just takes a lot of time, patience, persistence, and just keeping organized. But it was pretty maddening trying to kind of book what we wanted. Because we didn't have like an around the world ticket. It was just all these like separate flights with separate airlines.
Separate one-way flights, and you have a start date and an end date that you kind of each country, and we kind of just from there.
And getting visas, trying to figure out what countries we could go to at the time that we had, where we didn't want to go to India in the height of the summer or anything where we'd be like boiling to death.
And I think those were some of the planning times were actually the hardest in our relationship.
No, we'd get a little snappy with each other.
Really snappy at each other. But we also learned a lot about like how we work together.
Yeah.
Which was thing.
That's true.
Like I learned that it works much better if we're doing something together on the computer. I should be sitting in front of the computer using the mouse, because then it becomes a cooperative thing. Where if Natalie gets to put in front of the computer and the mouse, it's just the Natalie show.
Now, why?
I get locked into what I'm doing.
Why is that? Because
she wouldn't listen to my suggestions and do anything on her screen. She would just do her own thing, where at least if I was on the screen, I could take her suggestions and we could do it together, and then be like, well, what about this, and actually do it. And it seemed to little things like that, learning about the way we interact and using our strengths and weaknesses and to be able to figure out a problem was a really important part in that.
Yeah.
Was all the planning before the trip? Was most of the planning before the trip?
I'd say like 80%.
Flights, yes. And like what countries we wanted to go to.
And roughly where to go, what we might want to do. But it was still pretty freeform.
Then by the end of the trip, it was hard because like we hadn't planned a lot of those countries. It was like we had an entrance date and an exit date.
Yep.
With sometimes kind of a like, oh well, we should fly out of here. Maybe we'll go here, and sometimes that bit us in the ass. But a lot of times it just made for more adventure.
Well, that's to say some people don't like that, and some people love it.
Yeah, it was really hard to kind of try to balance those two because, given that we were using these award miles, like we couldn't be flexible with when we'd fly. So we had to just like go in being like, okay, hopefully this is enough time for this place and kind of work within that window.
Yep. And Natalie was an amazing travel logistics planner. Like she was so good at doing all of these things, very thorough to the point where she not only has to investigate all 5 options, but then the other 32 options that you would never do as well, just to see if they were better than and that's what drove me insane.
That's where my mind goes.
But that's where I just kind of let her handle that a lot.
That's when you pass the laptop to her.
Exactly.
It's
better that way.
Things, Well, she'd always come back to the original plan I had, but
Oh, really?
So for people who don't know about travel hacking, it's the art form of collecting miles through various different techniques, right? Like churning credit cards.
Yeah, mostly that.
Mostly credit cards.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are both, but then it's true what they say. If you read these blogs about travel hacking, they say collecting the miles is just the first step.
Yep.
I mean and then you've got maximizing miles, and then you've got preserving miles, but then you've got to deal with spending them.
That's very hard,
and it's so much harder than you would expect.
Sometimes it's very tricky to spend them. There's a lot of rules and restrictions. It helps if you are flexible.
Yep.
With when you need to travel.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It seems to me that if you had to plan the whole thing out in advance, that kind of kills the spontaneity. I mean, isn't there a way to just go to country number 1 and stay, and then when you get bored, use your miles to go to country number 2, or is it just?
But you might not have enough miles to get home.
Oh, because it's just so.
Most miles, like you want to book them like a month in advance,
at least,
because
not 6 months.
if anything, like they'll tack on like a ton of fees if it's like less than a month, and then you usually just don't get many choices.
Yeah,
right.
It's really tricky.
We had to it was particularly challenging to get from the Philippines to Peru, and so that was like. We took some nasty flights. It was a nasty flight, but it was actually only the award availability for that leg was just so minimal. So we had to book it well ahead in advance, and we even waited 3 weeks to book that, I think, and it ended up screwing us over and adding another 12 hours to our flight and all of that. So you do kind of have to. At least the way we did it was plan that all out. But where we led for spontaneity was just we didn't have an itinerary in the country.
Right.
Okay.
We have some things and, some things we wanted to do and things that we thought about doing, but we kind of just we just booked the flight. And then as we got closer, we would book a hotel for the first 2 nights wherever we landed. And then we would kind of figure our trip.
Right. And then tell us the itinerary. What happened? Where did you actually go?
Yeah. So we started off in New Zealand for about 5 weeks. And that was still, I think, one of the most exciting parts of our trip. Partly because it's one of the most beautiful countries I've ever seen. And it was really, I love the way we traveled there. We did a lot of camping and we hitchhiked all over.
Yep.
And so we met so many interesting, lovely people.
Exclusively hitchhiked.
Yeah.
Was that on purpose?
Yes.
You knew that
So
about that
easy.
in advance or something?
Dan knows hitchhiking quite well. I was new to the whole game of it, but
I used to
loved
hitchhike
it by the
around
end.
the U.S.
Yeah.
Hitchhiking in this country is tough. And for me, I never was. It's just so time consuming.
Yeah.
Well, yes, you can't necessarily have a. I've got to be here by this time. But, I found hitchhiking to be remarkable. I mean, I did it in about 2002. And it was incredible. It taught me the fact that the human nature is inherently good and giving and caring, not scary and fearful.
Yeah,
It's true.
That's what I learned about it, and I've definitely learned a lot of good tricks for hitchhiking, and I applied those in New Zealand, and we had
we were safe.
New Zealand was even easier than U.S. was.
Well, does New Zealand have a hitchhiking culture?
It does.
A little bit.
Because there's really no public transportation. I mean, it's all just 1-lane highways and, a couple they have Naked Bus or something, but it's a giant tour bus that only kind of goes to certain.
Oh, those are no fun.
Certain cities. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But we got to the remotest places just by hitchhiking.
Really?
Yeah. And never really waited. I mean, I don't think we ever waited
45 minutes was our longest.
Longer than an hour ever.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing at all.
Yeah.
40. Wow. And deep remote New Zealand. That must be so magical.
It
was
was. It was beautiful. I'd love to go back.
But then, of course, you did know you had to get back to the airport by a certain time.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So there was a little bit of a risk to hitchhike.
Well,
Lots of risks we would certainly we'd certainly have things we might book a hotel and then or a place to stay on couch surfing or whatever, and there was some trickiness getting to the places, but we tried not to back ourselves into a corner where we had to get somewhere there. But most of the timelines, I think there was only a couple times we didn't get to somewhere when we kind of needed to get there.
Were all your hotels and all your accommodations and everything points also?
Not all of them, no.
Just a few every now and then. We found they worked quite well in India. You didn't even have to
Southeast
use
Asia.
that many points to get to stay at some, 4 or 5 star hotel. And it was a nice diversion from, in India's, that was where we went next. And we loved it, but it's definitely challenging. You really are traveling there.
Yeah, you're traveling.
And, you're definitely out of your comfort zone in many ways. And so, having a nice hotel every every now and then is definitely a treat.
It was always fun because, I mean, we were backpackers, so we would do hostels. We would do a lot of camping, especially in New Zealand. We camped a ton to try and save money.
Yeah.
But it was really funny coming into these like fancy hotels when we would use points because we're just like
bedraggled backpackers.
dirty backpackers walking in and they're like, "Can we help you?" But like, "Yes, I have a reservation." And they're just like, "Oh, yes, sir. Can we take your bag?" I'm like, "No, it's okay. I'll hold on to it."
I don't want to put you through that.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of, did you guys have big bags or big backpacks?
Not too bad. We had these nice Deuter backpacks that they have some airflow in the back, and they weren't that huge.
42, 45 liter bags.
Oh, yes.
But we got them specifically because they actually fit in the overhead bin exactly.
Yeah, they're actually carry-on.
And so we
saved us a lot of hassle.
We carried on our bags almost every single place.
Genius. Yeah, that's what you would have to do, right?
Yep.
If everything that you need is critical and in there.
Yep.
Yeah, it is pretty critical.
You don't want it lost, and it's
Yep.
So there's very few places we actually had to check our bag.
Yeah.
So travel with points. Most of your hotels, and what if you
Some
did
of our
stay in them were
hotels.
cash?
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about what your budget was?
What did we end up spending?
I think we ended up for 6 months. We did the most expensive part was we did a lot of diving, scuba diving,
Activities, tours.
and tours and things. But I think we both got, for total like. I think we probably each paid maybe with flights and taxes and fees for like little things and not that. We probably each paid like $500 to $600 total for all of the flights each.
Oh, okay.
And then included with that and included with food and reservations and all of the stuff like that. I think we both spent less than $10,000 each
For 6 months.
I think it's around
6 months.
10 grand. Yeah.
Yeah.
10 grand each for 6 months,
Yep.
plus $500,000 points each.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow, that is you guys killed it.
And we really didn't, we saw and did the things we really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So we weren't like eating out at like nice fancy places, but we'd spend quite a bit on, like a caving tour or diving for, a week.
Yep.
Diving for a week?
I mean, we did a lot more diving
a lot
than
of
that.
diving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like we
Philippines. I mean, we dove in like 5-6 different places.
Yeah. I mean, I think
And that
probably
it's expensive. It adds
I
up.
probably had over 25 to 30 dives total on the trip.
Wow. Yeah, diving does get pricey too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's impressive. Okay, so where did you go after India?
Let's see. Spent a little time in Thailand.
Yep.
And then we went on to Vietnam, which we loved.
Loved Vietnam.
Didn't have enough time there.
No.
And then we
That was one of our logistical mistakes. We decided, we'll fly in the top and fly out the bottom. And didn't realize how long
it's still a big
it
country.
took
Yeah. We had to book a flight in there just to get to the airport.
just to get there. Yeah. But it was wonderful. We wish we had stayed longer.
Yeah, Vietnam is a special place. Just such a rich, distinctive culture,
And then we went to
Well, wait, actually, before you talk about where you went next, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And we'll be right back with more questions about the rest of Vietnam, the rest of your trip, and then we're going to talk about the challenges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Today's episode is sponsored by Little Bird, the independent diamond and engagement ring experts. If you're getting married, the truth is that your engagement ring is likely to be one of the more expensive purchases that you ever make. And it's a tough one to make. How do you choose? Where do you go for reliable information about diamonds? Do you even want a diamond? And how do you keep from getting ripped off? Now, you can probably get up to speed on all of these issues by yourself because there is an immense amount of information on the internet. But that takes time, and time is valuable. And that's where Little Bird comes in. I vetted Danielle, the owner, myself, and I can tell you that not only is she good people, she really knows her stuff. Little Bird takes you through a process that helps you to find a ring that matches your personality and has lasting impact. They charge a flat fee for their services, and the odds are you're going to save more on the ring by working with them than they charge in the first place. So give Little Bird a call for a free consult. There's no harm, and you're going to learn a ton. And you can find their website at littlebirdtoldyou.com. And remember, the best way to buy an engagement ring is with a bird's eye view. Welcome back. I'm here with Natalie and Dan. We're talking about their world travel love affair. And you had just been telling me about how amazing Vietnam was. Mm-hmm. And I interrupted you as you were telling me where you went after Vietnam.
Oh, yeah. So after we went to Indonesia, also an incredible country where everyone's house just looks like a temple and vice versa.
On Bali.
Yeah, in Bali. We didn't get to fly around to the other islands, but
So this is all flights so far, because I'm assuming if you would, you had to fly from India to Vietnam. I guess you could have taken a train or something, but
We flew from India to Thailand, and then from Thailand to Vietnam.
Okay.
From Vietnam to Indonesia.
yeah.
And then we did take a ferry out to Gili Air, just a little
There were
boat.
still a lot of ferries,
lot of
especially once we hit the Philippines after. It was just, it's all islands. So it's just a ferry here, a ferry there. I mean, like
Yep.
8-9 hour ferries.
what kind of ferries are these?
Like not much better than a rowboat.
I mean, it could be a boat with a motor with a couple pieces of bamboo taped to the side.
Oh, I think the worst was when they put that tarp over us that we had to hold down. And then there was so much spray that you were completely soaked by the time the boat docked.
That was Little Corn, Nicaragua.
Yeah, that was in Nicaragua.
Was your suitcase at least waterproof? Your bags?
The suitcase got thrown in the back. We do have covers, little waterproof
I
covers.
had my laptop with me, but I had it in my backpack, which was under my my rain
Raincoat.
jacket. And I was just like trying to protect the equipment. I was like, I don't care if I get wet, but
You're holding down the tarp, protecting the equipment.
yeah, it was, I mean, sometimes
holes
that
in the
is
tarp
traveling,
and-
like you're not always having a great time, but
Why did they give
They
you the
make
tarp in
for-
the first place if you're just going to get soaked
because
anyway?
the spray.
Well, basically, it's just a very little boat, and they overcrowd it with people.
Yeah, it's packed
and then
with people.
If there's any chop, the chop sprays up and over.
Super choppy.
And so basically, they just give us a big tarp to like hold over our heads, and everyone on the side is holding it, and the water's just dripping down your arm while you're
horrible.
holding it.
And the wind is blowing, so you're holding it so hard that like your arms are getting tired. Like I had to keep like holding it at different places and switching, then it would kind of fly up.
It's a tourist job to be on the outside, I guess, right? Like if you're a local, to stand in the middle.
Stay in the middle where you're dry and you don't have to do any work. You just have like a tarp like sitting on your forehead.
What body of water was this that you were crossing?
It was in the Caribbean Sea.
in the Caribbean,
Little
yeah.
Corn Island is
But it's pretty far off the coast.
It was Little Corn to Big Corn.
Yeah.
It was from there, but it was off the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So this must have been on your loop back.
Yeah, this was towards the end.
Nicaragua was our last country.
Last
Yeah.
country. Okay. All right. So backtracking.
Back
So you
up.
were in Indonesia.
Yep.
And then Bali was the end of your Indonesia tour.
Yeah.
Technically, we also did a little bit, like there's a little place,
Nusa Lembongan.
Nusa Lembongan.
And the Gili Islands are really special. Definitely recommend those
Yeah,
places.
so lots of places in all of these countries.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And then from Indonesia, we went up to the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
and we did a ton of different like ferries and flights and
Buses and
buses. That was the most like we spent a.
that's where I got dengue fever.
Yep.
You
That
got
was
dengue?
not- yeah, it was
wow.
not fun. Yeah.
Welcome to the dengue club. Not
Really?
many people
You too?
live. No, not me. But I guess I can't welcome
Welcome
you
to
because I've
the
never been.
dengue club.
I'm just saying. I guess I should say congratulations on being in the dengue club.
Yeah.
Hashtag dengue survivor.
I know. Yeah. No, it was, it was shitty, but it wasn't the worst.
Oh come on! This comes from a woman who actually went on a tour while she had dengue.
It was my birthday. I
It was
didn't want to
her
like sit in a hotel
birthday
room all
on
day.
dengue, and she flew on dengue. She traveled on dengue,
yeah.
and then finally, after like 3 or 4 days of traveling and actually going on a tour and everything, I just like forced her to stay in the hotel, and then
I can be pretty stubborn.
yeah, she can be pretty stubborn, especially when she wants to do things. And it's the
Yeah.
fear of missing out. It's a constant theme, I think, on our relationship. As she has intense
Little bit.
FOMO, but
Especially traveling. It's like you're only there one,
yep,
We're only going to be there once
yep.
for the most part. So
But it's been it's been a force for good, because when you're
Mm-hmm.
fear of missing out, you want to do a lot of amazing things, and then of course it's also a force of evil. So,
Mm-hmm.
So-
come on, I've
You were
learned to
evil.
temper that side.
Yes, yeah. I think
I've
Burning
been-
Man helped immensely.
Yeah,
with,
Burning Man
with
helped with
FOMO.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
You can't see it all. You can't do it all. And it's nice. I think we learned to kind of make sure we were having days where we just had downtime, because that's
Yep.
not something you factor in when you're planning a trip, and you need that. You need to kind of come back to yourself. You need not to be planning the next thing or doing something that day.
It's a real luxury, isn't it, to be able to say, wow, there's this amazing thing right there, but I'm going to sit right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
And some of those were the best days too, when we didn't have any sort of agenda and we just roamed around and, saw what we stumbled across.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so after...
Okay.
Well, now just give me the quick
Philippines.
synopsis of the countries.
Well, we're almost
from
done here.
Philippines, then we flew through Philippines. This horrible flight to Guam.
It's like
to
47
Tokyo.
hours of flying.
We took 6 hours in Tokyo and zoomed to Tsukiji Fish Market and had sushi.
It was fantastic.
Which is closing soon.
Yeah. Oh, is
Really?
it? I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
they're closing it and moving it.
Oh, okay.
But they haven't got the new place handled yet, so the closing is a big issue,
Wow.
Interesting.
as an aside.
I've never
But
seen
anyway.
so many types of tuna in my life.
Oh, I know. It was incredible. But so it was just a quick sushi Tokyo trip, and then from Tokyo we flew to Houston. We left Tokyo at the exact same time and day as we also left Houston.
Flying
That
to
is so
Peru.
cool.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we flew from Houston to Lima. So it was a
Yeah.
horrid flight.
The Houston Lima leg.
All of it.
All of it.
Yeah, that was. Did you say 48 hours of that?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And how much
48
did you sleep in that?
Here
Some,
and there. We
I
were
don't
pretty
know.
jet lagged actually once we got to Lima, because then we flew directly on to Cusco, and then there you also have the elevation.
Elevation, yeah.
So that kind of messed us up for a
Yep.
few days, but we had a good week there. So
Yep. So Peru, and then we did both in the Andes and in the jungle, and then we went from Peru to Nicaragua,
Yep.
and Nicaragua was our last country. Then
Yeah.
we flew home.
yeah,
Did you do an ayahuasca journey in Peru since you
did.
were there?
we did.
Yep.
We'd
Really,
done
you
it
guys?
before.
I was just a shot in the dark. but-
Come on, you know us. I mean, I have a long history with ayahuasca, and Natalie had also been experienced with it and wanted to do it in the traditional way. And
It was nice being in the jungle.
yep, we would have loved to find a different person to have done it with. They were okay and
Yeah.
they were safe and it was good medicine, but we could always hope for a little bit more involved.
Yeah.
More compassionate
Yeah.
caretakers. So
Yeah.
and shamans. So, but it was
Yeah.
wonderful medicine and no real life changing, amazing
No.
moments for that because we weren't there for that. I had
Just a week.
previously when I had sought out the medicine, but not that this time was much more of like let's reconnect with the medicine.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then after Peru, home?
Nicaragua.
We went to
Nicaragua.
Nicaragua
And then-
for a couple
then home.
weeks.
And then
Yep.
home.
yeah.
Wow. What a crazy tour.
Now,
you
such a
guys.
whirlwind tour.
It was.
Would you do it the same again? What would you adjust?
I think
now
things
that
would be
you've done
very
it?
similar. We definitely spent a lot more time in Vietnam
More time in Vietnam.
and a little less time in the Philippines. Yeah.
And but otherwise, pretty
But
much the same?
otherwise, everything else is pretty
you wouldn't
on
adjust
point.
the way you did the flights or any of the that kind of stuff.
I mean, a lot of it's dictated because we had to do it for
Yeah.
monetary or travel hacking reasons,
or
etc.
time,
Yeah.
we really want to get here, but it would take, 2 travel days just to kind of get there and back versus like a quick flight. And so
But
a lot
no,
of those little decisions were sort of made on the fly.
I was really happy with that. I think the only thing that we kind of talked about this is like what would we have done different or hoped to have done, and I think I would have personally had each of us write out like just ideas of things that we wanted to do in each country, like do the research before the trip, write them all out, and then just
Yeah.
put them in our packs and not look at them until we kind of got to the point where we're planning that
Oh,
country.
that's a smart
Yeah.
idea.
Just because I
Yeah.
find like we got some like by the end I was certainly travel fatigued. For like
Yeah.
Nicaragua, I was kind of
You
like
get
at the
kinda
point where
tired.
like this is all beautiful, just pick a fucking spot. I don't really want to.
It's true. It's
know.
true. You do get kind of jaded. You're just like, oh, this is gorgeous. And yet, you're just kind of,
Yeah, so
it doesn't
having
hit
that-
you in the same way.
Having that like list of originally, like, oh, what was I excited when I first learned about the country?
Yep.
Can be really useful after the travel too, because then it'd be like, oh yeah, I did want to do this, and I should make that a priority, or oh, you know what? And we were always good at like changing if we're not people who were stuck to our own itinerary.
Yeah.
It's nice to have it and then, honestly diverge from it.
Yep.
Well, so that's one way of doing the adventure travel where you've got all these different places you're going to go to. The other way is to pick a place and go deep until you're sick of it and then go to another.
I like that style too.
Would you guys ever do that together? at this point?
I don't think you could with your FOMO. I think you
No, I mean,
definitely
I don't
go
know.
deep
There's
to a
something really
place.
nice about like kind of not feeling like a tourist and kind of coming in as as like a temporary resident, and you have a whole different experience when you're kind of getting to know the people in the place and
true.
you're spending some time there. I never did that enough in any one place, but there's been places where I'm like, I really like it here. I'm going to stay here for like a week or so.
Yeah.
And it's been really special. I don't know.
I think going deep for us would be being 2 weeks in the same spot.
2 weeks? That's
Still,
not very
like,
deep.
scratching the
I mean, that's kind of
surface.
deep, I guess.
Yeah.
We love the different.
And some places it doesn't take that long. Like we love this place. It's Little Corn Island off the coast of Nicaragua. And what's so fantastic about this place is that it's so tiny that like you just end up running into everyone on that island. And there's very little Wi-Fi, so it's not this space where everyone's just on their computers or on their phones. Like you're just forced to interact because there's not much to do, and it's wonderful. And like, we didn't do much there at all. We did some diving, but like we could have spent like a month there.
Yeah.
Just because it had that dynamic. It was just this little tiny special place.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so the thing about travel, adventure travel, is that it's supposed to do something to you as a couple. So what did it do? What happened to you guys?
That's a great question.
I think we might have like bordered that edge of complete insanity of being that like we got so goofy and weird all of the time that that we would have to constantly remind ourselves like, hey, we're in public.
Yeah. I think we needed to like re-socialize again after that trip because we spent a lot of time together. And I think that's one of the wonderful and also like hard things as a couple because, I mean, I've traveled on my own in the past and it's a lot different when you're on your own or you're single. You meet people a lot more easily, and here we are a couple, and we really had to make like such a concerted effort to try to like meet other travelers. And
Was it
kind
harder
of
to meet
tricky.
people? Yeah, I guess because if you're single, you can rest on flirting a little bit. Can't
Yeah, and also like Dan doesn't drink, so it's like we're not like at bars, we're not in that kind of drinking culture late at night where you often kind of meet people in that way. So,
And
it
then
was-
if you're
it was
going to go
tricky.
pal around with somebody,
Yeah,
it's easier if they're a couple. But,
It is.
But they're on an agenda if they are a couple. So it's harder
Yeah.
to just pal around with a single person, I suppose.
Yeah, it
It's true.
became a challenge. It was something that we consciously thought about a
Yeah.
lot while we were out. It's just like, hey, if we meet someone doing something, like you can't just be like, hey, and see if you connect. You actually had to like, hey, if someone was cool and interesting wherever we were, we'd be like, hey, our goal is to invite them to do something.
Yeah.
Whether it was dinner or lunch or a drink or something, just to continue these conversations. Because I think so
That
many
was helpful.
times, when you're single, it's easy. You're just all in a hostel and you like, connect and that. But as a couple, hostels we found were not that that great for us.
We tried staying at some hostels just for the social atmosphere of like, oh, we'll maybe meet some more people here. But I don't know, a lot of these hostels just didn't have like a great like social dynamic, or else they were just insanely young and kind of not kind of doing the things we were doing.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, we felt old a little bit.
We felt kind of old.
Man, we were in Jamaica this last summer, and our friends wanted to stay at a hostel one of the nights, and we did, and I felt like an ancient relic. I mean, it was crazy.
I know.
You forget how,
Yeah.
these
It's
people who
true.
are adults but they are young.
Oh, I know.
Yep.
I was that person once, but it's now it's like it's midnight. I'm tired. I want to go to bed.
I know, I
Like, I'm not going out right now. Come on.
Oh, gosh.
We had fun. We forced ourselves to do so. Like,
We
we
met some
stayed at
pretty
this
cool
crazy
people, though.
treehouse hostel in
God.
Nicaragua,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
I don't
True.
think there was anyone over 21 there. I swear, it was like unreal. We were
pretty
they
young.
could have all been my children. I think. All of them. But you know what? For not drinking, I was still the life of the party and had fun with.
Yeah.
We wore these giant pants together.
Yep.
Both fit into one pair of pants and
a
danced
whole
around.
other story.
And it's a
Yeah.
long story. But
You guys. So I want to know the readjustment period when you came back. Because it's like you
Yeah.
said, it's an alternate universe kind of being out there for 6 months, and and you were spending a lot of time with just one another, and
Yeah.
you got to follow your own agenda, and you didn't have any responsibilities. You do, but not really.
Yeah.
You don't have to earn money or go to school or any of that stuff, or put your calendar date to meet your parents for dinner or whatever. So what was that like when you came back and were transitioning back in?
It was super challenging. It still
It
is
was kind
super
of hard.
challenging.
We're still going through it a little
I think
bit.
for me especially, we got back around July 15th. Immediately had some issues with like a housing inspection that we had to get ready for, and then only a couple weeks after being back, my aunt was diagnosed with cancer, and I had to go out to her to handle her estate and help all of that, and so basically, like I went out, and she unfortunately passed away only about a month after she was diagnosed. And so I spent, and she was unfortunately definitely on the side of hoarding stuff. And so cleaning out her house was one of the most difficult things I had ever done. And so that was pretty much all of August.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
And then we got back in September, and now it's really only been like a month. It feels like being home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me,
It's
for
been
her, it was a little harder.
Yeah, it's been challenging coming back because you're right. I mean, traveling in the way that we were doing it is such a privilege and a luxury. There's no responsibilities really. But then when we got back, your aunt wasn't doing well, and Dan was down there helping her for a month. Another thing that happened while we were gone, Dan's car got like totaled.
By somebody who was using
by
it?
like a drunk driver or something. It was a hit and run.
Oh, geez.
But we actually took the insurance off the car because we were traveling for so long. So we like came back to have to deal with that, and are still sort of dealing with it and fixing it up.
Still trying to get that back on the road as well.
So it was just a lot of like just kind of life obligations and unfun life things, like looking for jobs again, and kind of having all this time and. Thinking kind of about your finances, and, we're planning a wedding now. So it was just kind of like the real world life just kind of came rushing back in.
Oh, yeah. You guys are married. I thought that's
Not
right.
quite.
Yep. So I asked her to marry me when we were in New Zealand.
Yeah.
On this wonderful little beach, Waihara Keke Beach.
Didn't see it coming. It was right on Valentine's Day.
She didn't even know it was Valentine's Day when I pulled her out of the tent. I had secretly snuck out in the morning and went and wrote "Will you marry me" on the in the sand. And then I went back to the tent, snuck in, and thought about, oh crap, I hope I don't get other couples married by accident or like in trouble, right? But and then we snuck out and had basically brought her to the beach, and she's like, did you write that? And
it took me a few seconds
I can imagine.
to process. Wait. Oh, someone wrote something. Wait, did you write that?
Yep.
And you did.
Yeah, you did.
Yep. I actually did. Yep. And so that was how I asked her to marry me.
Yep.
Did you have a ring with you?
I did, yep.
Had you brought it all the way from the States?
Here, yeah.
And that's a long
beautiful.
story as well. But yeah, I had brought it with us.
And so you were hiding it the whole time.
The whole time.
Yep.
Very sneaky.
So, okay, so now you got to plan a wedding, now there's this sneaky thought process that can work its way, I think, into the human brain in situations like this, where on one hand you were traveling and you were having epiphanies about perspective and self and identity and purpose. And then you get back and the car is totaled and family members pass away and you got to deal with taxes and jobs and school. And it's gone. It can be gone. That perspective can be gone in moments, right? Or maybe it isn't. So which is it for you? How are you guys holding that part of the transition?
I think this part has been certainly more challenging with our own relationship than traveling was. Like we get snippy at each other once in a while, but we're actually so similar. And so like I'm very laid back and she's very driven, but it melds in such a good way. We've probably had a harder time in our relationship being home than all of the travel and everything. like they say, it's like travel with someone, you'll really know them. And it's true. But I think travel and then survive coming home and rebuilding your life and then see where you're at. It's because I mean, it hasn't been that difficult, but we've certainly had to talk a little bit more about like the way we are getting jobs and what's expected and how much we will work doing that, and our own expectations of someone else kind of rebuilding their life along next to us, and it's
that's a tricky one, because then that implicates like your personal value, and so can you tell me specifics what's going on with that one?
Well, some of it, like, I mean, it goes to like down to how we solve problems and how we talk about things, right? And we're starting to understand like how we deal with stuff, and like when is someone upset. And I'd say we both have the same weakness that we don't want to rock the boat. We don't always love conflict, and we'd rather not kind of discuss these things. And so we both have that tendency, so we have to learn how to break that tendency and
to address it head on.
Yeah, address it head on.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so that's been like, we have this, kind of understanding. It's funny because like Natalie, I know I'm usually pretty laid back with my emotions, and I've always been the rallier, so I tend to hide my emotions a little bit more. Where Natalie, she also does that, but I know she's so silly and fun and goofy, and I love that about her, that I know that there's something wrong when the internal monologue from her head stops coming out of her mouth.
When I get quiet.
When she gets quiet.
When I get a little silent.
She gets silent. I'm like, oh, weird noises are not happening. There's something wrong.
I'm not humming. I mean, there's just like a quiet.
It's just a quiet. And then comes to this point like, oh, crap, what did I do? What did I do? Is this mine? And that's always been a challenge of mine. It's like, is what's making her upset related to me? Is like, am I like aware of this? Am I upset? Like, what do I need to do about this? And she doesn't really talk yet about like what's upsetting
Sometimes
to her.
I just don't know yet. I'm feeling kind of frustrated. And a lot of times it is just like, situational, like just being stressed out in like certain areas of your life. And like, and they just like come to a head one day.
Yep. So I have to play I've learned to play. It's like, well, if she's being silent, a lot of that time means that I need to now start pursuing like, okay, what's wrong? And I need to pull it out of her. And
do you feel burdened by that role?
Space.
I'm confused about that role. Like, I don't always know whether she wants it or doesn't. So I usually check in and I try to be like, it's like, okay, you're being silent. Are you upset about something? And I know the first thing she'll always say no.
No, of course not. No, nothing's wrong.
Exactly. And so I know that.
I don't know why. I know, even as I say that, it's not
But it's
true.
because you don't know what's wrong yet.
Sometimes, yeah.
And that's often. And so I have to take a judge of like, does she know what's wrong, or is she just not telling me what's wrong?
Yeah.
And
does
if I
she
get
not
a sense,
know, or is she just not telling you?
If I get a sense of she's not telling me, then I push pretty hard, and it's what she's verbally told me she wants too.
I like that. I need some pushback.
In the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the moment of it happening, do you like it?
Just in general,
I mean, do you get annoyed with him, is what I'm saying, when he's doing that?
She's already annoyed with me, so that doesn't what the hell. It's like that doesn't matter. I can't. In fact, I use that any annoyance to get her to say more.
And if anything, it's validating. It's like, I recognize you're not okay right now, and I want to check that out. I want to make contact with you in some way around that. And so it's good, because otherwise it would probably progress a little longer.
Yeah. And sometimes I don't like that. There are times that I don't want to go. Like, I'm like, you know what? I'm not like, she's mad. I'm just going to let her do it, because I really don't feel like dealing with it right now. And I'll just let it go. And she just stews.
And are you waiting for him to say something when that's happening?
Not necessarily. I don't know. I feel like it's almost just like sometimes I'm just in a certain state, like whether it's like a frustration or some anger, and I kind of need to kind of like go through it and get it out until I'm ready to like talk about it or resolve anything, And maybe that's kind of part of that, like not wanting to have conflict.
Yeah. I mean, it always is different, but I think the first part is that you have to become aware that there's an issue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you both separately have to kind of become aware of your own parts and each other parts in an issue, and then you have to talk about it. And that's what we've found really has been our thing. It's just like we both realized, like, okay, what's going on? Oh, it's the silence. That's always our key of like something is wrong.
Well, what about snippiness? Because that happens too.
Yeah, I can get snippy.
Do you get snippy? And I think,
but do you both get snippy?
He has a really high tolerance for negative emotions. So I've seen you get snippy occasionally, but I feel like I'm usually the instigator of snippiness.
Yeah, and she'll know when I'm at my limit because then I start getting snippy.
Yeah,
and I'll usually call it out and be like, "This is the way. This is what's going on. This is how it's going to happen." And I just, point it out because
that sounds so healthy, you guys. Have you ever had a full blown out?
We really haven't had a full blown out fight.
I think that the only like really bad fight we ever had was when in I forget what country it was, but like we had an agreement not to have cigarettes. And she really wanted.
I really
one.
wanted a
and
cigarette.
She was also
Even
very
I don't
drunk.
Smoke, but
and I was very, and I'm of course I don't drink, so she was very angry at me that I didn't let her have her
something
cigarette.
so stupid. But I don't know. I was just so irritated. I felt like almost like a child that's like told no.
Yeah.
You get these every once in a while. You get in these really interesting persnickety moves. It's what your dad calls it, like a petulant child. Like she just decides to like bike off into the never because she wanted to go that way, and it's even though the place is over here. So I just go to the place, and she arrives like a half an hour late, and she's like, "I was going a different way."
Is it?
I'm like, okay, have fun.
Well, that's so. It is really funny.
Yeah.
It's also funny because it's so satisfying to be right in that scenario, isn't it? Like, because when you said that, you're like, yes, I know what you mean. And I was imagining when, Aubrey and I get in some sort of a discussion about, it's usually, coordinates is a good example of the quickest way to get somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
driving
sure I'm
directions.
always right. Yeah,
that can incite some fights.
and I'm pretty sure I'm always right, and I'm pretty sure she's pretty sure she's always right.
Yeah.
And then when you are the right one,
it's
hard not to be smug about it.
Even just a little bit. You're right. It's true.
But he just did that, and you didn't care because you thought it was funny.
I don't know. It doesn't happen often, and I mean, it wasn't so much about being right. I think I was just like having a bit of a moment and wanted to
do it. Like, but she was just as right in doing it the way she wanted to do it. It just wasn't my efficient way of getting there. Hers was a less efficient, but a much more validating way.
So this is a specific thing that did actually happen. Some bike ride, and you went the long way.
Bike ride, and she went the long way, and
Well, then
actually, she just biked away. Like, didn't even
I thought
talk
you were
to me.
behind me, and then I realized you didn't. And I was like, well,
Then
we
she
were
didn't
meeting at
care.
a place, so it's like I know you'd be there. It's not like I'm losing you, on purpose.
but you could have gone with her. You could have gone her
yeah,
longer
that's
way.
true.
Right?
Yeah, you could have followed me.
I could have. Yep. I absolutely could have. But we did. I did
not
want to get
to.
in line for the comedy show that we were going to.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, there's no problem with her going her way, and I'll go mine. And
Get us
because
tickets.
whoever gets there first will get us in line first, and maybe it'll be the most efficient way.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up directions because, in fact, when we first started dating, we used to get in little fights when Dan would drive and I would
She yelled
be
at
in
me
the
a lot.
car, like giving him directions or helping him navigate.
Yep.
And it's like, unless I'm, I would have to tell him like every single move, sometimes twice. And sometimes you just, I don't know, didn't hear or went a different way. And I would be like, why are you going that way? And for me, I'm not trying to be mean, but it had a different effect on you.
Yeah. No, that was one of the points where I spoke up and was like, look, you yell at me in the car, and I don't appreciate it. Like,
Say it's yelling, but I know what you mean. Yes.
To me, it felt like yelling. And it felt like I was being yelled at for something. And so that was what I mentioned that. I talked about it.
And we had a conversation about that.
Conversation. It's one of those few things that kind of upset me, and I spoke up. And then she's actually been amazing at
I stopped.
addressing that.
I just kind of stopped doing that. I mean, there's times it's slipped out, but it's kind of nice to kind of let go of this, like, who cares when we get there? If we get there like 2 minutes later, then what Google says or whatever it is. You know, I mean, it's like
what I'm curious about is when he brought it up, if you were annoyed with him. You know, because he was bringing up a thing that you were doing that wasn't.
I mean, I think it's always a little hard to hear something about you that someone doesn't like, something that you're doing. You know, but in many ways it seemed like a small thing and something I could change, and I could tell like it bothered him. So I was like, okay, like I will be better at not doing that and catching that. And that, I don't know, it felt like a little fix. I don't often feel really hurt by things like that, because it's just a small thing that I'm doing. It's not like, you know, the core of like who I am as a person.
Right.
So I imagine it sort of depends on the criticism. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you haven't faced any huge ones yet.
No, not really. I'm sure we will though.
No, we have not had a really, really big fight about something that was actually important. It's not.
I'm wondering, the last thing, little clue I have is that I know, Dan, that you are risk tolerant. You're an entrepreneur, and you like to follow your passion. It's a common way of saying that. And I remember being very inspired by you that money is not your primary driver in life. I don't remember how you articulated what it was, but I always found it to be a really nice perspective on things. And I don't know at all what your perspective on those things is, but a lot of times risk-tolerant people who are entrepreneurs and fall into following passion team up with people who are very structured. I've seen that dynamic a lot. So how's that coming together for the two of you?
I don't know. Am I a structured person?
You are a very structured person.
Yeah, I guess I am.
I don't know that we would be great business partners, but we're a fantastic relationship, you know? And I think it's because we've learned, like, I think in relationships, you do learn all about the, what to compromise and what's the things that you really need. And also kind of how we work best together. Like sometimes I know that it's best to just like, okay, you get to plan this. And then, oh, you know what? Every week I need to make a priority to also plan something. And
but wouldn't that work in a business too? I mean, what's the difference?
I think I think that logistics and relationships are good. I think with creativity, like Natalie likes to do things a very particular way in certain stuff, right? And so if we had two separate projects that could come together, and so I think that would work well. But I don't know.
I need to kind of work on my own.
She like we learned this about like our travel planning. It's like, you know, again, if we wanted to do something together, I had to be in control of the mouse and the keyboard. Otherwise, I couldn't be involved.
Right.
And so in those steps, we kind of understand that and realize that, like, you know, when it comes to, I think coming to a business is very interesting, especially as a founder and or a partnership of like being able to, you know, drive that overall vision. And, you know, I guess I don't
have to have really delineated roles.
We'd have to have very delineated roles, and we know that about each other, I think. And so I think a lot of times relationships and projects and things don't work out when you have, you know, when you haven't learned that way of working together and what works well and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
And I feel like too, like what I admire too about you, that you're an entrepreneur and that's like your driving focus, and it's not about money. And I think we have pretty similar values.
We do.
Around money and how we like to spend money.
Really?
Me too. Good. I mean, I'm, you know, in the mental health counseling world, and like some people make money at it, but for the most part, you do it because you love that work, which is where I come from. And so I think we both really want to support each other in the career goals that we have, and hopefully money will come out of that. But it's not like a main pursuant for us.
Yeah, we both have that similar thing is that, you know,
pretty frugal people.
We want to make sure that we have enough to be able to take care of ourselves, our family, and to grow, and to make sure that we plan for the future. We're both very logical and planners, but that's not what, like, making $1 million is not our goal. It's what experiences and what things we can have in our life and do. If we need money to be able to do that, we'll figure out how to get that. But it's much more about, like, what experiences do we want in our life? What things.
What kind of lifestyles do you want? I mean, I don't want to be a workaholic where I'm, working 60 hours a week.
Yep.
I want a work-life balance, and I imagine we'll want more of that as, if and when we have a family. And
Yep.
So are you guys travel hacking for the next trip?
I haven't even thought about that yet.
I did just sign up for a new credit card.
He's already on the ball.
I was like,
where are we going?
My car, it needs a couple $1,000s worth of stuff. I might as well just go get that credit card so that when I have to pay for it, then I can, clear my signing bonus.
There you go. Right now, I mean, I think the wedding and just trying to, like, get back into a schedule and make money again is kind of the focus right now. But I imagine once that's in place, it will be like, okay, where can we go next? Where can we escape to?
Yep.
And I'd love to hear your different perspectives on this. What would you say to a couple who wanted to do a trip? What points or tips would you give them?
Well, like I said, make sure you have a list of all the things you kind of want to do separately. And then come together and do that.
I think talking about, like, what you want out of that trip is important going in, so you don't have, like, very different expectations, and especially you have expectations that don't get met. I think that's a real, like, cause for frustration and disappointment sometimes.
That's the biggest point, I think, with traveling is just about what expectations are there and what are not being met and when they're being met, and how do you deal with that when they're not being met. Like, are you guys both hostile people, or are you 5-star? And we tend to be camping and hostel and then splurging for just a little bit better than a hostel room, especially in places that are cheap. But so we're really similar on with that. And so I think it really has to be talked about, like, with, a couple, like, what kind of level of travel are you okay with? And when it goes wrong, and you don't get a hotel room and you're stuck at, stuck wandering around, like, how, like, it's not anybody's fault. It's like, how are you going to resolve that? It's like, are you going to be okay with just like walking around, checking out places? And what happens when you're doing stuff that doesn't come up, or like you didn't expect or you didn't plan for?
Yeah. I think the true measure is, seeing how couples fare when things don't go well. Like, in the travel, like, there's hiccups, like, we missed a flight one time, and now we can laugh about it. At the time, it was like, oh my God, how do we miss this?
Yep. We just make it happen, and we planned it, and we're both like, okay, well, you look into these flights, and I'll check out this idea, and you call this person, and we just,
and you can team up together. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for being on the show, guys.
It's already over?
Boom. Time went so fast. It always does.
Didn't even get to bring in all that other juicy material.
Oh, well, what was it?
No, I'm like... I've hooked you for a second episode now.
I want the juice. Well, really, so I like to end shows with a game of this or that.
This or that. Okay. I don't know that game.
Basically, I give you a this or that, and you tell me which one you prefer.
Okay.
So, for instance, it would be like chocolate or peanut butter. And you would say...
chocolate.
And you would say...
chocolate.
Oh, it's easy. Okay. What about combining them up, though?
Oh, that's even better.
Always good. You said this or that. It's not a this and that. I mean, come on. I like to play by the rules, and I like to win. So that's not the way you win.
Oh, no. I've got some good questions for you in that case. Okay.
She's just as competitive. It's horrible.
Would you
flip the table competitive?
Would you rather be able to have melt metal with your eyes? Yeah, by looking at it. Or would you rather be able to make trees grow?
Question. Can you make them grow the way you want them to?
This is all the information the genie has given you.
Okay.
How fast do these trees grow?
I know, melting metal sounds so much cooler.
It does sound cool.
Maybe if I could get the trees to grow really fast and like I could grow them into a tree house or something, that'd be awesome. But the melting metal, you kidding me? It'd be like welding with my eyes. It'd just be like,
the maker in you. I can see that. For me, I don't know. I think I'd rather watch trees grow or make them grow than
sounds as fun as watching plants
deal with
like
metal.
Grass grow.
Yeah, I know nothing about metal and how to work with metal, so
You guys are a perfect
leave
match.
that up to you.
Okay, Batman or Superman?
Well, Superman flies, so I've always wanted to fly. All those flying dreams, just when you wake up, they don't happen.
Yep.
What about you?
Daredevil. I don't know. I think that would be awesome. No, but I guess if I had to choose one, Batman, just because he's like got actual weaknesses instead of this like,
He's more
I've got
human.
this thing called kryptonite that's really, everything else I'm perfect in every way except for this tiny little thing. At least Batman's like a real human person. He just needs some gadgets and stuff to be cool. I like gadgets.
And you can make those with your melting eyeballs.
There you go.
Okay, and enlightenment or $1 billion?
Enlightenment.
Okay, and if you had to die right now in the next 5 minutes or live for infinity,
Oof.
which would it be?
What kind of body do I get into infinity? Because if it's this one right now, I can deal with this for a long time. But
I'm gonna have to say,
ooh, that's hard.
I believe in reincarnation, so I'm gonna say I'm gonna pass on right now.
Because you get infinity
I might
anyway.
go with death because I'm curious as to what comes after. I think there's more to this existence than what we know.
Yeah. All right.
I like to believe that at least.
Yeah.
So,
Good answers.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Thanks again. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for our episode with Dan and Natalie, folks. Thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard on our show today, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a huge difference for our ratings when you do that, so I really appreciate it. And please also consider donating to our Patreon campaign. We're on a mission to crush shame, as you may know, and every penny really helps. You can find our campaign at patreon.com/together. And that's also where you can find bonus clips and deleted scenes from our episodes. And don't forget to check out our sponsors for today's episode, Little Bird, the independent diamond and engagement ring experts. The best way to buy an engagement ring is with a bird's eye view. You can find them at littlebirdtoldyou.com, and they really are great folks, so definitely check them out. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out via one of our platforms. You can find our website at www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/togethershow. Twitter and Instagram are both @together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. That's all for today, folks. See you next Monday.